So today I want to tell you about this score, Vermont Rhythms. But I want to begin just by letting you hear the first 11 bars.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
You probably feel that sounded like jazz, and in fact those instruments are normally instruments that can play jazz: two saxophones, trombone, guitar, percussion, and piano. But these musicians are all classically trained, all graduates of the Royal Conservatory in The Hague. And their group plays only contemporary composed music. I wrote this piece specifically for their group, which is called Clang, in 2008. They premiered it in Amsterdam in 2009. And I'm very pleased with that piece. But it's really not jazz. First of all, it's in 3/time. 1 and a 2 and a 3. 1 and a 2 and a 3. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They count in Dutch to begin the piece, like that, because there's 11 possible notes in every measure. There's actually 12 notes, but nobody ever plays on the 12th beat. If you know my music, you probably already suspect that there's some mathematics involved. And in fact, what you just heard is this square on the cover. It's an 11 by 11 square, and in each line and in each column, there are 6 black squares. And every pair of columns has 2 black squares in common. The first 2 columns, for example, have common black squares here, here, and here. The last 2 have common black squares here, here, and here. But that's also true of the lines. The first 2 lines have common black squares here, here, and here. And the last 2 lines, it's easy to see here, here, and here. So there's always 2 common squares in each pair, every pair. That's already kind of amazing for me, but let me tell you that the mathematicians in Vermont that I worked with found 42 squares like this, all with these same characteristics, but all different, such that the 11 rhythms in each square, multiplied by the 42 squares, made 462 rhythms, which is exactly the number of different formations of 6 notes that you can put on a line of 11 points. So it's a complete set. Let's listen to that again, just those first 11 bars, now that you know something about how it's written.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Of course, finding an arrangement like this requires a good mathematician. So I should explain to you a little bit about how that happened. I have a mathematician friend, and now he's a friend. I just wrote to him with mathematical questions, and he answered several years ago, and we've continued to have correspondence. He's the co-author of this book, which is sort of the Bible of combinatorial designs, which is a branch of combination theory. His name is Jeff Dinitz. I found in this book a square which we'll show you, which is 7 by 7, where there are 4 black squares in each line and 4 black squares in each column, and they have similarities. It's a little bit like the square we just saw, 11 by 11. When I found this 7 by 7 square in Jeff Dinitz's book, I wrote to him and asked, well, if you could do 1 square like that, if you could do 4 more squares like that, and with 7 rhythms in each square, we could have all 35 possible rhythms of what mathematicians would call 7 choose 4. That is, 4-note rhythms in a space of 7 beats. Well, usually when I ask him questions or when other non-mathematicians ask him questions, it's easy stuff that he can answer immediately. But this one was a little bit of a challenge, apparently, because it wasn't until about several months later that he finally sent me this letter. He had the answer. As you see in this letter, briefly, he's saying, no, it's not possible, this specific question of finding all the 35 4-note rhythms. But it may be possible to find 11 by 11 squares where all the 6-note rhythms can be found in 42 squares. Well, in fact, a graduate student of his was already working on this problem. Well, another long delay. It was, let's see, Jeff's letter was in October, and it was, I think, March, May, and the next year that his graduate student, Janaszewski, sent me her thesis, her master's thesis, which included a lot of pages like this one. Now, I don't expect you to learn about Hadamard and room squares, and in fact, all those numbers you see are just going along for the ride. The only thing that I and the mathematicians were really interested in was how to color 6 black squares in every line and 6 black squares in every column. As you can see, that's the case here. It's curious that sometimes you can't go directly and simply to an answer. The only way to solve the problem is to go in some roundabout way, as they did here, through a complicated thing that had a lot of numbers that are just going on for the ride. Anyway, this worked, and from this they could deduce the 6 black squares in each line in each column, and all 42 squares. Well, this is amazing for me. And I decided, hey, I have to really write a piece with that information. So in the next 6 months, I was working on Vermont Rhythms the whole time, trying to put these 462 rhythms together into one piece. It was a big job, 462 measures long with all those 6-note rhythms. Came to 42 pages in 16 minutes. But I wrote it for Clang, and fortunately they were very interested and played it very well with a lot of work. But I've been talking too long. It's time to go back to the music. Let's listen to that first 11 bars again, but I'm going to go on this time to the second 11 bars, which is a percussion solo, the third 11 bars, which is has the rhythms and the winds separated by guitar riffs, and I have a little drawing of that. You can see there the rhythms in the winds are black, and the guitar riffs are red. The next 11 bars is a saxophone duo, and we have a drawing for that too. You can see here the baritone sax is the black squares, and the tenor answers in the red squares. The next 11 bars has rhythms in the piano with guitar accompaniment, and the sixth and last 11 bar phrase everyone plays the rhythms together. It's another tutti. So now let's hear all that. 66 bars, 6 sections of 11 bars, those 11 bar phrases, and played by Clang.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
So the whole piece, all 42 squares, consists of 7 sections like this, each one 66 measures long. But I'm only going to play one more of these sections. If you want to hear the whole piece, you should order the Clang CD, which contains a few other Johnson compositions. I should add that I was very pleased with this project, especially since this music was so well played by Clang, and the reaction to the CD has generally been very good too. But it was also a success for Jeff Dinitz. In fact, the people in Vermont were very impressed that their math professor had stimulated a piece of music which was being played by a top ensemble in Europe, and they named him University Scholar that year and asked him to do a special lecture, which he did. But that's enough bragging. Let's just listen to the next 66 bars of Vermont Rhythms played by Clang.
Thank you.